Imagine yourself transported to a distant time where power and mystery intertwined in the golden corridors of one of the most impressive places in history. Now, close your eyes for a moment and visualize a palace so grand that its walls gleamed in the sunlight, covered in pure gold. A colossal temple built with the world's finest wood and stone, so massive that even today, engineers wonder how they were moved. But behind this grandeur, there was something even more fascinating. At the heart of this empire, a man ruled with wisdom that defied time itself. Solomon, the richest and most powerful king of Israel, not only built one of the most magnificent temples in human history but also spent his days among 1,000 women, wives and concubines who not only sought his attention but also competed among themselves for something far greater than love. What really happened behind the scenes of this immense harem? How were the women chosen to spend a night with the king? And what dark secret did Solomon keep in his legendary ring? Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you are about to discover might completely change your perspective on the most enigmatic reign in history. After a majestic sunrise, when the first rays of sunlight touched the walls of Jerusalem, Solomon's temple came to life. The aroma of sacred incense filled the air as priests and Levites walked through the golden corridors, preparing the space for the day's rituals. But while the temple pulsed with devotion and power, another world existed within the king's domain, the harem. 1,000 women inhabited this space, hidden from the eyes of the people. 1,000 stories, 1,000 secrets, 1,000 destinies tied to a single man. What happened behind those doors was a silent game of power, influence, and seduction. But contrary to what many imagine, the battle was not just for the king's love, it was for prestige, for a place of prominence within the court, and, most importantly, for the chance to bear an heir. At the top of this pyramid was the pharaoh's daughter, the most powerful woman among them all. Brought from Egypt as a symbol of alliance between the two kingdoms, she did not live in the same harem as the other women. Her private palace was decorated with hieroglyphs, filled with Egyptian servants, and guarded by soldiers who answered only to her. She wore translucent linen and jewels carved in the temples of the Nile, exuding rare perfumes that few could afford. Her power went far beyond beauty. She carried the influence of an empire and knew exactly how to wield it. But she was not the only woman in the harem with a well-defined strategy. Other wives and concubines had their own methods of standing out. Some used their intelligence to influence the king's decisions, subtly suggesting ideas during palace visits. Others became masters in the art of dance, music, or writing, composing poetry and songs that reached the sovereign's ears. Each one sought her own path to power, but they all had something in common: preparation for the moment they might be chosen to spend a night with Solomon. This process did not happen randomly. At dawn, a special messenger would walk through the harem's corridors, discreetly calling the chosen one for the day. The moment her name was announced, everything changed. She was immediately taken to the House of Purifications, a space reserved solely for this purpose. There, a ritual that lasted hours would begin, involving baths in scented waters, massages with exotic oils, and elaborate hairstyles made with ivory combs encrusted with precious stones. Every detail was meticulously planned. The knight's attire was chosen according to the king's preferences, made from fabrics so fine they seemed to float with the slightest movement. The perfume applied to the skin was selected not just for its scent but for its meaning. Some essences were considered aphrodisiacs, while others conveyed mystery and power. Jewelry was worn strategically, placed in specific areas to attract the eye and create an aura of enchantment. Meanwhile, in the palace, the royal chambers were also being transformed. The bedroom was prepared with extreme care. Petals from exotic flowers were scattered over silk sheets, while special incense burned to create an intoxicating atmosphere. Golden lamps were positioned strategically to produce soft lighting, casting delicate shadows that made the ambience even more seductive. But none of this was by chance. There were secrets in this ritual that went far beyond seduction. Some women believed that being chosen for the night did not depend solely on their beauty or charm, but on hidden forces. Some turned to rituals before the encounter, using herbs and enchantments that were said to increase their chances of captivating the king. Between sighs and dances, the game was far more intricate than it seemed. And while these women prepared to win Solomon over, the king himself guarded a secret that extended far beyond political power. He possessed something that few knew about, a legendary object capable of controlling supernatural forces. But that is a revelation we will make later. What happened once the royal doors closed? How were these women chosen to rule the kingdom from behind the scenes? And what was the darkest secret of the wisest king in history? Stay with me, for there is still much to be revealed. While one woman from the harem prepared for a night with the king, another was already planning her strategy to be the next chosen. But within the palace walls, the game of influence went far beyond beauty. The women who stood out the most were not only the most beautiful or the most talented, but those who understood the power of information. What was Solomon thinking? What were his concerns for the kingdom? Whoever could touch his mind, and not just capture his fleeting attention, secured a privileged place. For this reason, each concubine and royal wife had her own informants. Servants and eunuchs were essential pieces on the chessboard of power. They exchanged small favors for valuable information. What was the king's mood that day? What music he enjoyed at the moment? What political decisions weighed on his mind? All of this was crucial. The woman who knew the exact moment to say the right word or offer the most pleasant company could change her fate within the harem. But within this universe of rivalries and alliances, one detail stood out even more. Among all the women who passed through Solomon's palace, few truly left their mark on history. One of them, however, was mentioned in the scriptures in a special way. Her name was the Shulamite. Unlike princesses from distant kingdoms or women adorned with gold and precious stones, the Shulamite was a peasant. Her charm did not come from nobility but from something much deeper. Solomon himself described her in verses that became eternal in the Song of Songs, one of the most enigmatic books of the Bible. Her beauty was compared to vineyards blooming at sunset, and her presence made the king's heart tremble. But what made this woman so special? Why, among so many who vied for his attention, was she remembered in such a unique way? Some believe that the Shulamite represented the king's true love, something that no political alliance or power strategy could replace. Others say she was a symbol of the relationship between God and his people, a metaphor for faithfulness and desire. What is known is that, despite all the grandeur of the harem, Solomon was a divided man. His wisdom and wealth were legendary, but within the walls of his palace, he faced challenges that no council of elders could solve. Over time, the alliances he had built through his marriages began to bring unexpected consequences. Each foreign wife brought with her not only her culture but also her gods. Gradually, the temples dedicated to the God of Israel began to share space with altars and rituals for foreign deities. Initially, these practices were discreet, confined to the harem's chambers. But as Solomon grew older, he began to allow these cults to take place openly as a way to maintain peace with allied kingdoms. The problem was that this decision weakened his own kingdom. Hebrew priests warned that the people's hearts were becoming divided, and prophets began to emerge, forewarning that if Solomon continued to permit these foreign cults, his lineage would suffer the consequences. But did he heed these warnings? Behind the golden and silk curtains, something was happening. A secret known to few, involving powers that went beyond politics or seduction. Within the palace, hidden from the eyes of the people, Solomon possessed an object that, according to ancient legends, gave him control over supernatural forces. His famous ring, known as the Seal of Solomon, was said to be a divine gift. Some believe that this ring contained the sacred name of God and that, through it, Solomon could command powerful entities. It is said that this very ring enabled him to build his monumental temple with the help of forces that no human could control alone. But what was this ring, really? Did it truly exist? And if so, what happened to it after the king's death? Prepare yourself, because what comes next will unveil an even deeper mystery. If you thought the harem and the power struggles were impressive, wait until you discover what Solomon kept hidden within his own kingdom. Solomon's ring. A legendary jewel, surrounded by mysteries and stories that have spanned centuries. According to ancient accounts, this ring was not just a symbol of royalty but a tool of absolute power. It is said that it bore sacred inscriptions that allowed the king to control invisible forces, summon supernatural entities, and even subjugate demons to his will. This story may seem unbelievable, but records in ancient texts suggest that Solomon used this power to build his empire. But how did it work? What was in this ring that made it so special? According to ancient traditions, Solomon possessed knowledge that went beyond human comprehension. He was able to communicate with spirits, decipher riddles, and understand the secrets of the universe. His ring was believed to be the key to this knowledge. Some versions of the story claim that God himself granted Solomon this object, allowing him to have dominion over the elements and celestial and infernal beings. Other accounts state that this ring contained the true name of God, a knowledge that granted absolute power to whoever possessed it. With it, Solomon was said to have commanded invisible entities to work on the construction of his temple, moving massive stone blocks, carving cedar wood with precision, and erecting structures that, even with modern technology, still baffle experts. And it doesn't stop there. It is said that Solomon also used his ring to imprison evil spirits in bronze vessels, sealed with sacred inscriptions. These entities were locked away, prevented from causing destruction. But what happened to these creatures after Solomon died? According to legends, some of these mystical prisons were opened over the centuries, releasing forces that were meant to remain sealed forever. This could explain accounts of supernatural phenomena that have arisen throughout history. But what about the ring? What happened to it? There are several versions of its fate. Some believe it was buried along with Solomon in a secret location, protected by curses to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Others say it was stolen and passed down through generations, carrying its aura of power and danger. There are even those who believe that the ring never truly disappeared but remains hidden, waiting to be found. And this is where the stories become even more intriguing. Over the centuries, various secret societies have claimed to have knowledge of the ring's whereabouts. Some have tried to recover it, while others have sought to prevent it from ever being used again. To this day, there are reports of people who claim to have found traces of this object, but none have been proven. Whatever the case, one thing is certain: Solomon's legacy goes far beyond his wealth or wisdom. He left behind a trail of mysteries that continue to fascinate the world to this day. But there is still one final revelation about this king that few people know. Something that may change everything you have ever heard about him. And I will tell you now, in the next part. The mystery of Solomon's ring is fascinating, but there is something even more surprising about this king. Something that few dare to mention. Despite being known as the wisest man of his time, Solomon made a mistake that would change the destiny of his kingdom forever. He built the greatest empire Israel had ever seen, accumulated immeasurable wealth, and his fame spread throughout the ancient world. However, in the last years of his life, he strayed from the teachings that had led him to the throne. The political alliances he had strengthened through marriage began to take a heavy toll. His foreign wives not only brought their cultures and gods into the kingdom, but also influenced Solomon in a way no one had ever imagined possible. He began to participate in pagan rituals, allowing worship of foreign deities to take place in Jerusalem. To please his wives and maintain balance among the nations, Solomon ordered the construction of altars and sanctuaries dedicated to deities such as Astarte, Moloch, and Chemosh. What had once been tolerated only within the harem's chambers was now visible to everyone. The people began to question, how could the king chosen by God allow these rituals to take place within the holy city? The priests tried to warn him. The prophets cautioned that this decision could bring devastating consequences. But Solomon, now aged and surrounded by his court, ignored the warnings. According to biblical accounts, God himself sent a direct message to the king, saying that because of this idolatry, the kingdom would be divided after his death. And that is exactly what happened. When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam took the throne. But unlike his father, he did not inherit his wisdom. With an authoritarian rule and impulsive decisions, Rehoboam enraged the tribes of Israel, who rebelled against him. The kingdom that Solomon had built with such effort began to crumble. What was once a powerful and united nation soon split into two kingdoms, the kingdom of Judah, ruled by Solomon's descendants, and the kingdom of Israel, which broke away under the leadership of a new ruler. This division weakened the entire nation. The people of God, once united under a single king, were now fragmented, vulnerable to foreign invasions. The glorious empire that Solomon had built with wisdom and strategy collapsed due to the wrong choices made in the last years of his life. And what happened to Solomon's temple? The most grandiose construction of the ancient world, which consumed immeasurable wealth and took decades to complete, was destroyed many years later by the Babylonians. Its gold was looted, its stones were torn down, and all that remained were ruins and memories of an era of glory. But what few people know is that this temple did not completely disappear. Centuries later, it would be rebuilt and would continue to play a fundamental role in the history of Jerusalem. If we go back to the beginning of this story, we can see a curious pattern. Solomon's reign was a reflection of humanity's own journey. It began with promises, reached a glorious peak, but then fell due to wrong choices. This cycle has repeated countless times throughout history, and perhaps that is why Solomon remains one of the most fascinating figures in the Bible. He was an extraordinary man, but he was not perfect. His story is a reminder that not even the wisest of kings is immune to the consequences of his choices. But what about the legendary Ring of Solomon? What really happened to it? Some historians and scholars believe that the ring never actually existed, that it was merely a symbol of the king's intellectual and spiritual abilities. Others claim that he did indeed possess a special artifact, perhaps a royal seal, that carried hidden meanings and mystical powers. What we do know is that its legend remains alive to this day. There are groups of scholars and relic hunters who are still searching for the ring, believing that, if found, it could reveal hidden secrets about humanity's past. Will this relic ever be discovered? Or is it possible that Solomon's true power was never in an object, but rather in his ability to understand the mysteries of life? Solomon's story teaches us valuable lessons about power, wisdom, and the traps of ambition. He built a kingdom that seemed unshakable, but his decisions over the years ultimately led to his downfall. And this makes us reflect, how many times in life do we make decisions that seem harmless at the moment but, over time, can lead us down paths we never imagined? If this story made sense to you, leave a comment saying, "Wisdom is worth more than gold," because that is one of the greatest lessons we can take from Solomon's legacy. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That helps me a lot to continue bringing amazing content for you. Oh, and there's another video appearing on your screen right now, with another fascinating story you need to hear. Click and keep watching. See you there.